To do try again. Today we are going to do chapter Tesvav 15, a short but powerful capital of Tehilim. So this chapter was the one that the Kohanim used when the Jews came into Yerushalayim. The Kohanim would greet them by saying one of the things that they said in their greeting was this chapter of Tehillim. Many people also have the custom to say this chapter of Tehillim every morning before they start davening. So, what is this chapter of Tehillim? Let's look how it begins. So, it starts off by saying Mizmor David, a song by David, Hashem, talking to Hashem, Mi Yagur Ba'ehalecha. Who will live in your house, in your tents? Mi Yishkan Behar Kachecha. And who will dwell?
Which Tehilim? Which Tehilim?
It is 15.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, Hashem mi yagur ba'alecha, Hashem who will live in your tents, mi yishkan b'har kodechecha, and who will dwell on your holy mountain. So we immediately think that the capital is going to be all about connecting with God, which is what all the commentaries say. This chapter tells us how to connect with God. And from this introduction, we have a picture in our heads that we are about to hear about going to live on some distant mountain in silence, eating our bread crusts and speaking once a year. That seems who is going to live in your tents, who's going to dwell in your mountains. And right after that, it starts the whole rest of the chapter of Tehillim gives us instructions for how to be a nice person, which says, bottom line is that the way to connect with Hashem is by being a nice person, by being menschlich, by keeping the mitzvahs bein Adam lechavero, between man and his fellow human man. That is the answer to the question which David HaMelech poses right here at the beginning of this chapter. Let's unpack a little bit the way that he structured his question. So again, looking at those words, Hashem mi yagur ba'ehalecha, who's going to live in your tent, mi yishkan b'har kodechecha, and who will dwell in your holy mountains. So we know that Tehillim is a book of songs, poetry, and so there's a little bit of license for David HaMelech to repeat things, to say things, but each word is thought about carefully, and so we want to understand why he repeated his question twice. Why didn't he just say Hashem mi yagur b'halecha or Hashem mi yishkan b'har kodechecha? What is this repetition and the change of words? What is David HaMelech intending with the change of words? So first, let's look at the two words that David HaMelech uses for live or dwell. He uses the word yagur and he uses the word yishkan. So strictly, what is yagur is to live, and yishkan to dwell. And immediately Rav Shamshon Hirsch picks up on this and he says, Yagur, from the word ger in it, is talking about a temporary residence. And Yishkan, to dwell, is talking about permanent residence. So as soon as we start understanding those differences, we can understand a little bit more of what David is asking over here. So quite a lot of opinions on what David HaMelech was actually saying. So the simple pshat of this is just David HaMelech saying who is gonna connect with Hashem at a more practical level. Not everybody could go into the Beis HaMikdash. So if we're talking about the Beis HaMikdash, then the question would be, are you pure? Are you holy? Can you go in? All those kind of questions of can you go to the Beis HaMikdash? But as we know, Tehillim applies to always, to all times. And so it has to be deeper than that as well. And so the Radak comes along and says, Ahalecha, the tense, is talking about this world, a temporary existence. We live in this world for a temporary time. So even if we are blessed, please God, with good long life, it's still temporary. It's however many years in this world, and it's a temporary existence, not the whole time. And mi yishkan b'har kodechecha. So what are the har kodechecha? Says the Radak. This refers to Olam Haba. Olam haba is eternal; it's forever, and therefore the word yishkon, which means permanent residence. Um, so again, interesting that David is asking us two questions. How can you live nicely in this world? Answer: by being nice to your fellow human beings, which is going to elaborate on. And how can we live nicely in the world to come? And he answers with the same answer: by being nice to your fellow human beings. Another opinion of what the difference is between these two questions. A halecha, we are told, refers to shuls, batei medrash, shiurim, yeshivas, schools, and har kodshecha means your life. All that you've taken now from the world and brought it into your life. So why the temporary and the permanent? So we go into shuls, yeshivas, schools for short bursts of inspiration. You go and listen to a shir so that you should feel motivated afterwards, but you don't go live in the shir, right? You don't go live in the shul. You don't go live in school. You go there for short bursts of inspiration, and then you have to take from it. And so therefore the temporary word yagur, you're going into this like holy tent, so to speak, for some motivation, for some inspiration, and then you're going home. And what do you want your home to be? You want your home to be a dwelling of holiness, always, permanently. Mi yishkan b'har. You want to mute. And so, how do we? So what do we do? Mi yishkan b'har kodesh, who will live nicely in this world when we take that which we get from the places like shuls, shurim, batei medrash, school, yeshiva. When we can take that, bring it home into our own homes, into our own lives, then yishkon, then it becomes permanent, and it becomes real. And the final opinion that I'm going to bring you is that this is talking about Eretz Yisrael, and specifically during Galus time. There are those miyagur ba'ayalecha who will live there for short spurts of time, temporary. I think we call that tourists. And then there is yishkain bahar kachecha, and who is going to be brave enough to go and live in Har Kachecha in Eretz Yisrael. For always. So this is the introduction that David Hamelach makes to this perek, and now he continues and goes on to give us 11 different instructions of how to be nice. What is human, what is expected of us in our human behavior. So he begins with the instruction Hailech Tamim. A person has to go as a tam. Tam simply means sincere, simple. We've got to go about our lives without trickery, without cheating. We've got to go tam. We've got to go with just sincerity. And we have to have goals, we have to have plans, but we also have to know that the way we have to achieve our goals is by being a tam. And this is what it says about Yaakov. That Yaakov was an Ishtam. He was a man who was able to achieve everything that he did just by being sincere, by being properly sincere. Continues and says, Ufa'el tzedek, and he does what's right. Okay, that's the literal translation. Pa'el tzedek, he does what's right. So he's righteous. He does what's right. The commentaries immediately say that this has got a much deeper lesson for us than just doing what's right. A pa'el is a worker, and tzedek is righteous. If you want to achieve in this world, if you want to be considered a mensch in this world, you have to be a pa'el tzedek, which means a righteous worker. And what does it mean to be a righteous worker? So immediately the Talmud gives us stories. Probably one of the very famous ones, which you've heard before, is that of Abba Chilkiah. Abba Chilkiah was very famous that when he davened for rain, it came, and there was a time of a drought, and the rabbis sent a delegation to him to ask him to daven for rain. And Abba Chilkiah was standing and working, and he wouldn't even greet the people, the delegation who came to him, until his hours of working were over, because he said he was being paid. What he explained afterwards, that he was being paid for this time. He couldn't start chatting with them about davening for rain right now. He had to finish the hours that he was working. And I often think about it, how many of us are careful to be a po'el tzedek, that we don't look at our WhatsApps, we don't check our private emails, we don't answer our own phone and chat on the phone during the hours that we're supposed to be working. And the other thing that we do that probably doesn't fit under the thing of Poel Tzedek. I remember once I asked my husband to bring home the stapler from the office. I think it was Purim, and I needed a stapler to put together my Shalach Manas, and I was planning to return it. But right now I wanted the stapler and I wanted staples that I hadn't bought. And my husband looked at me and he said, "It doesn't belong to us, right? It doesn't belong to us." How many people are careful, and this is Po'el Tzedek, not to just take a handful of pins or of paper clips or of staples, or whatever from the office. We don't consider that stealing. We consider that normal. And comes along David HaMelech and he says, Po'el Tzedek, you need to be a worker who is righteous. And then the third instruction that we have, the Dover Emes Bilvavai, and he has to speak truth even in his heart. So speaking truth is obvious, I think, that in order to be righteous, you have to speak the truth. But then there's truth in our heart, and what is this talking about at a probably deeper level? Is sometimes we've decided things in our head or in our heart, as it's saying over here, but we haven't actually expressed them even. So the most famous story, again, that the Gemara brings is of Rav Safra. He had a very precious stone, and again, people came to him to ask to buy it. And when they arrived, he was davening Shemona Esrei. He couldn't speak, but they started talking to him immediately, and he couldn't answer them. And they told him, "Please, can we buy that stone? This and this is what we'll pay for it." And in his head, he was going to finish saying Shemona Esrei, and he was going to say, "Yes, that's a good price. I'll take that price and go." But because he was quiet for a few minutes and they didn't realize he's davening, they thought that they hadn't offered him enough money. So they started upping the price. "Oh, okay, we'll pay you more than that." And he still didn't answer. "We'll pay you even more than that." And he still didn't answer. And then finally he finished davening, and he was able to speak to them. And they had offered him probably double of what they offered him originally. And he said, "No, I'm going to take the original price, because I said in my head, I said yes, but I just didn't tell it to you yet." So this is speaking truth, bilvavai, even to his own heart. Chazal tell us that when someone speaks truth, they can do tshuva on anything. So if you're losing hope about somebody who, you don't know what they're up to and where they're going, what they're doing, the thing that should give you inspiration and feel that that they will be okay is if they tell the truth, if they are a truthful person. I had one child who was very naughty, and some days we were pulling out our hair. We didn't know what was going to be with this child. But one thing that gave us absolute trust that he would turn out fine, which Baruch Hashem he has more than fine, was he never lied. He never ever lied, no matter what. When he get called into school, he could have really saved his skin. How many times he got into trouble over things that he did? He always admitted, and he never lied. And when I read this, when I was preparing, I said, I just have to say that this is that seeing someone tells the truth. This is really a sign for us that they'll be okay. Rabbi Twersky speaks in his commentary on Tehilim. He says, this is a lesson in chinuch. How many times parents punish their children for telling the truth? Okay, who broke this? okay, go to your room. Okay, it's like whatever. Why should the person own up? Why should, like, only a stupid child then should be owning up because they know they're going to get into trouble. So he says that his mother was extremely careful, that she never punished them for telling the truth. Who broke this? I'm sorry that you broke it. Who said that? I'm sorry that you that you said it. But no one ever got punished for telling the truth. Um, so Chazal tell us that these three things, Hailach Tamim, Pa'el Tzedek, and Dover Emes Bilvavo, these three instructions that we have here, are the three behaviors of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And so once we know that, we know we're all capable of it because we have it in our DNA. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov gave us the strength to do this, okay, to go with Tom, to be righteous, and to speak only the truth. Then David HaMelech continues with things that come out of our mouths, and he says, "Lo ragal al l'shono," he hasn't spread gossip with his tongue. "Lo asa l're'ehu ra'a," he doesn't do bad to his friends. "V'cherpa lo nasa al krovo," and he's never shamed his neighbor. So again, that's three more instructions. Le ragal al shono, that he doesn't speak lashon hara, and the commentaries go even one step further. That ragal al shono means just speaking unnecessary, bad dvarim b'telim, that like just don't service you at all. And the Mezritcha Maggid says, we're looking all the time for inspiration, to be careful about what comes out of our mouths. And the Mezritcha Maggid says, do you want the ultimate inspiration? He says, it's written that when we speak Lashon Hara, the very words that we speak come up as prosecutors against us in the end. So if a person would think to themselves, I am going to be my own prosecutor when I say that, if I say that, that should be a good motivation for us to keep our mouth shut, not to say that. So this is le ragal al lashona, being careful with general lashon hara. Then le re'ehu, okay, le asa le re'ehu ra'a, he does not going to harm his friends. So our first step of lashon hara is that we speak about everyone else, that community, those people, the people in that country, right? It's very general, distant lashon hara. But then there's a closer lashon hara where we speak about our friends. That's even worse. Okay, these are people who are supposed to be our friends, and we're still speaking about them. So this is David HaMelech. Next level, don't speak about your friends. And the third level, the nazal krovo, and don't shame your neighbor. So this is talking about family, and this is the third level of being careful with lashon hara, not to speak about or not to speak about our families, and more than that, here it uses the word cherpa, which means to shame, to embarrass our families. When we were growing up, my mother was reading from it was the Dr. Spock book of the day, but it was an Israeli psychologist. I could not think of his name today when I was preparing. And the line that he used, which my mother always liked to quote, that you should treat your guests like family and your family like guests. That's the good measure, I think. So if we could do that, yeah, maybe. So the main thing is that we should work on how we treat our family. We shouldn't embarrass them. Chazal tell us that Yosef epitomizes this pasuk. Le'ragal al Shana, he never spoke lashon hara about his brothers. Starts off in the beginning of the parasha by telling us how Yosef tattletaled about his brothers, and if you learn it more deeply, you'll understand why he told each one of those things, and it doesn't fit lashon hara in its simplest sense of the word. But how much tshuva did he do for that anyway? When Yosef was living in Egypt and he was there as the prime minister, one of the things that always strikes me, and I think one of the biggest things of the whole of Sefer Bereshis, is when I learned that Yosef had Yaakov come live in Egypt, and he lived there for 17 years before he died. In those 17 years, Yosef saw his father 4 times. And we think this is outrageous. He missed his father for 22 years, his father who he loved, and he had opportunity to visit him every single day, twice a day if he wanted. He could have had him living near him. So why did he choose not to see his father? And he had him made sure he was looked after very, very well. By most opinions, his wife Osnas took full-time care of Yaakov, her father-in-law. So why didn't he do this himself? Because Yosef knew that if he would be near his father, he would land up speaking Lashon Hara about his brothers. His father never knew exactly the story of what happened to him, and he knew that if he would spend too much time around his father, he would burst. He would have to tell his father what his brothers had done to him. And so he chose rather not to see his father than to speak Lashon Hara. He was careful with his Lashon Hara. Um, he didn't like and he never did bad to his friends, so to speak. When his brothers came to Egypt, he could have had them done away with. He could have had them thrown in prison forever. He didn't have to. He didn't have to forgive them the way that he did. Yet, says David HaMelech, he made them friends, so to speak, and he looked after them, and he didn't do he didn't do bad to them, or even though in our minds it would have been excusable. And he didn't shame them. He was so careful not to shame them, not to embarrass them, that at the time where he told them who he was, he sent every Egyptian out of the palace, out of his house, so that the Egyptians shouldn't see them in their embarrassment when they realized that this man who they were talking to is Yosef, their brother, who they had sold, and that. So this pasuk epitomizes the greatness of Yosef. The capital continues and says, Nivze be'einav nim'as. He looks at bad things with horror, but as Yirei Hashem Yechabed, but honors those who fear God. Nishba lahara v'la yamir. He keeps his promises no matter what. So what is this idea? Nivze be'einav nim'as. He views bad things badly. So come Jews tell us, like in just in a simple understanding, pshat, he looks at bad things and he recognizes that they're bad. Most of us look at bad things that appeal to us and we justify why they aren't bad. And we explain all the time, I can really do that. It isn't as bad as all of this. It's whatever. An honest person knows inside them, nivne be'enov. I see with my eyes that this is something that's not good. Nimas, and I continue to look at it with horror, even though it might be something that I desire. And the Mefarshim say, why is it followed so quickly with Ve'ezirei Hashem Yechabed, and those who honor Hashem or fear Hashem, he honors, is because we are quick to see other people doing bad stuff, and ourselves we always good, right? We have reasons, justification for what we are doing. We used to have somebody who commented to my husband once. He used to eat Shabbos by us very often, and he would say to my husband, that was a socket at them sermon. What he was trying to say is that whatever my husband was saying in his sermon was for someone else in shul. It's such a pity that so-and-so wasn't here to hear that. What a pity that that person, I hope that person was listening. So we always sit and think, somebody else should be listening to this, right? They could learn a big lesson from this. We don't often look at ourselves and say, well, maybe that applies to me, right? Maybe I should have been listening to this. And this is what it means, nivze be'einav nimas. What that which is wrong even in himself he doesn't like, and that which he sees good in someone else he admits. He says, yes, that's good. Okay, that's positive. That's positive, which is again a very difficult midah. It seems like it's so obvious. We honor people who do good things, if you Hashem, but the truth is that most of us feel very threatened by someone who we think is holier than us, and so. I once heard someone say that the definition of a fanatic is somebody who does more than I do. So it doesn't mean that they really very holy. It doesn't even mean that they're fanatic. But the moment someone else has chosen to do something that I haven't chosen to do yet, then they're crazy. Okay, they are fanatics. They are over from. They are whatever it is. What is the definition of a mensch? Here says David HaMelech. There's Yirei Hashem, those who fear God more than I do. Yechabed, I respect them rather than feel threatened by them. Nishba lahara v'lo yamir. In this, he makes these promises and he keeps them, whatever the cost. So sometimes we take on stuff that's too much for us. Okay. Sometimes we take on stuff that we don't really want to keep. We just in the moment we feel like we need to keep it, and this could be in us in our relationship with Hashem. It could also be us with our relationship with the people around us. And here says David HaMelech, one of the signs of a mensch is a person who promises, and even if it doesn't go well, doesn't like it. Okay, it's too hard, it's too much. V'lo yamir, he doesn't stop doing it, even though it's difficult for him. Um, Continues and says, "Kaspei le nasan b'neshech." He doesn't lend money with interest. V'sheichad al naki lo lakach, and he doesn't accept bribes even to help an innocent person. So that makes 10 and 11. So big thing, not to take money with not to take interest on money. And the commentaries explain to us that the biggest lesson for not taking interest when we lend money is that not everything we do for other people has to benefit us. So generally, when we do things nice for other people, we do look at a little bit or a lot to see how this will benefit me. What will I get out of this, which I'm about to do now? And the lesson of lending somebody money and not being permitted to take interest says sometimes you do nice things for other people and you don't see the immediate benefits. You don't see how it makes you feel good and nice. And the 11th thing, the sheikhad al naki, like lakach, and don't accept a bribe. This is probably one of the most difficult things, not to accept bribes, because a bribe is anything and everything, right? So the Gemara tells about Rabbi Shmuel. He wouldn't judge someone who came and brought him the lunch that his wife sent for him. So the man wasn't doing anything nice except carrying the lunch. He didn't make it. He didn't buy it. He was just walking by, and the lady said, "Could you just take this and give it to my husband?" And he said, "You really did me a favor, and that's a bribe, and I can't be the judge in this." So we have to take notice of how we are bribed by people all the time. And then the capital ends with the words "Eise Eile," one who does these things, lo yimot la'olam, he will not stay down if he stumbles. And it says in the Gemara that after reading this capital of Tehilim, Rabbi Gamliel began to cry. And he said, "This is impossible. Who can possibly do these 11 things? I can never ever connect with Hashem. If this is the way to connect with Hashem, it's impossible." And Rabbi Akiva looked to him and he said, "You don't have to do all of them. You just have to choose one and do it properly." And he proved it from these last two words. He says it doesn't say over here, "Eise kol eile," one who does all of these things. It just says "Eise eile," one who does one of these things. Okay, one who tries his best to do one of these things. And Rabbi Gamliel responded and he said, "Akiva, you have comforted me." So this is the formula for being a mensch, for doing these 11 things. Um, and as we saw from the Gemara, that we try even to do one, and one good thing that we do leads us to do another good thing. And take notice of the word lo yimot la'olam. He won't stumble forever. And Rashi comments about this, that in our lives we will go through times where we stumble. We will go through times where we are better and times where we are not so good. But it's a guarantee that if we try our best to connect with Hashem via people, via connecting with other people, then la'olam, forever, we won't falter, we won't fall down. And that brings us to the end of Perek Test of. So.